The wind howled across the surface of the mining planet, carrying dust and the faint smell of burning metal. The sky was a dull orange, thick with clouds of dust that the sun struggled to pierce. Elias adjusted the visor of his helmet and stepped cautiously over the twisted metal and broken machinery of what had once been a freighter ship. The hull was scorched, and the metal plates were bent and twisted as if some enormous force had torn the vessel apart from the inside. He had been scavenging these wrecks for weeks, always hoping to find something valuable, something he could trade for fuel or food. But today, something felt different. His boots crunched on the debris as he approached a section of the freighter that looked like it had once been a cargo hold. The smell hit him first, a mix of rust, decay, and something else he couldn't place. It was faint, almost human, yet strange in a way he couldn't describe. He knelt and brushed away a layer of dust from the floor, revealing what looked like a cage built for a small creature. It was not large, only a few meters tall, with bars that had once shone metallic silver but were now dulled by rust. Inside, curled up in the corner, was a small figure. At first, Elias thought it was a child. But as he moved closer, he saw that her skin shimmered faintly under the dim light. It wasn't human skin. It was smooth and pale with faint streaks of glowing blue that ran like veins beneath her surface. Her eyes were enormous, deep and black, reflecting the dim light of the freighter like liquid night. She seemed fragile, too fragile for the harsh world she had been left in. Elias' heart tightened. She was alive. Somehow, against all odds, she had survived. The cage bars rattled slightly as she stirred. Her head lifted slowly and her wide eyes locked onto his. There was fear in them, raw and sharp, but there was also curiosity. Elias didn't know how long she had been trapped here or what horrors she had seen. Her breathing was shallow, her body trembling. Hey, it's okay," he said softly, lowering himself to her level. He held out a hand, but she recoiled, pressing herself further into the corner of the cage. Elias could feel his chest tighten. This was a creature completely alone, abandoned to die, and now it was staring at him as if he might be the next threat. He searched the wreckage for supplies. He had a small canister of water and a ration pack. Kneeling beside the cage, he opened the water and carefully poured a few drops into a shallow dent in the metal floor. He made a soft noise, trying to encourage her. Slowly, hesitantly, the alien girl crept forward and lapped at the water. Her tongue was small and delicate, like a creature from a dream, and her movements were cautious, almost ritualistic. Elias' mind raced. He didn't know her species, didn't know if she could understand him, didn't know if helping her would bring danger. But something in her eyes, in the way she looked at him, told him that she had no one else. He couldn't just leave her here to die. He spent hours cleaning the area, making it as safe as he could. He fed her small pieces of protein bars, watching as she sniffed them carefully before nibbling. She didn't speak, didn't make any sounds he could understand, but her eyes followed him everywhere. There was intelligence there, he could tell. She understood more than she could express. By the time the first 2 moons of the planet had passed the horizon, Elias had managed to open the cage. She didn't move at first, only watching him. He held his hand out again, steady and calm. Slowly, she placed her small hand in his. It was cold, soft, and trembling, and the glow of her veins pulsed faintly. Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. "Don't worry," he whispered. "I won't hurt you." It took a long time for her to trust him enough to follow him out of the freighter. Elias had to carry her part of the way, careful not to jostle her too much. The outside world was harsh and barren. The wind cut at their skin, the dust stung their eyes, and the distant horizon was filled with jagged rocks and the remains of old mining operations. But Elias ignored it all. His focus was on keeping her alive. Once they reached his small spaceship, he managed to get her inside without incident. The cabin was cramped and smelled faintly of oil and metal, but it was safe. He settled her onto a cot and wrapped her in a blanket he found in the storage compartment. She clung to it, her tiny hands gripping it like it was a lifeline. Elias found a medkit and gently cleaned her minor scrapes and bruises. As he worked, he tried to speak softly to her, telling her his name, explaining that she was safe. He didn't know if she understood, but he hoped she did. The alien girl finally spoke, not in words, but in soft musical hums that filled the cabin like wind chimes. It wasn't language as he knew it, but it was a sound of trust, of acknowledgement. Elias smiled, exhausted but relieved. But safety was fleeting. His sensors picked up multiple signals approaching from the planet's surface. He froze, the slavers. He had read about them, heard stories of their ruthless hunting of alien species for profit. They didn't leave survivors, and now he had one of their targets with him. He quickly secured the cabin, preparing the ship for immediate departure. The alien girl, still weak, watched him with wide eyes, seeming to understand the tension in the air. Elias gave her a reassuring nod, and she nodded back in her own way, her glowing veins pulsing faster with the stress. He powered up the engines, the vibration of the ship rumbling through the floor. The sensors showed the search party drawing closer, their ships fast and armed. Elias had to act quickly. He adjusted the controls, plotting a course away from the planet into the asteroid fields nearby. The rocky formations could provide cover, but navigating them was dangerous. One wrong move and they would both be crushed. The alien girl reached out instinctively, touching the controls, and a faint glow emanated from her hands. Elias felt a strange warmth pass through the cockpit, as if the ship itself responded to her touch. He hesitated, unsure what was happening, but it seemed she was helping. With her subtle guidance, they maneuvered the ship through the asteroid field with a grace he didn't know he possessed. Hours passed, the tension unrelenting. The alien girl, though weak, stayed close to him, sometimes reaching out and touching his arm or shoulder. Elias realized that she wasn't just fragile. She was intelligent, curious, and adaptable. He wondered what kind of life she had lived before the freighter attack, what her homeworld was like, and why she had been left behind. By the time they emerged from the asteroid field, the search ships were far behind, their sensors unable to track them through the debris and the gravitational distortions. Elias allowed himself a small sigh of relief. The alien girl, now resting against a cushion, seemed calmer. She looked at him, her large black eyes shimmering with what he could only interpret as gratitude. Elias knew their journey was just beginning. She was more than a creature to save. She was a being with her own history, her own thoughts, and her own abilities. And somewhere deep down, he sensed that she was more powerful than anyone realized. He named her Lyra, after the constellation that gleamed in the night sky outside the ship. It was the first human word she seemed to accept, though she did not speak it. Instead, she hummed softly, a melodic sound that comforted him as much as it did her. Elias adjusted the ship's trajectory, heading for the nearest human settlement. He knew they would need supplies, information, and perhaps help from others who could understand her abilities. But he also knew that danger followed them, and the moment they landed, they could be found. Night fell on the barren world below, the orange sky darkening to deep crimson as the moons rose. Elias watched Lyra sleep for the first time, her small chest rising and falling gently. She was alive, she was safe for now, and he felt a responsibility heavier than any cargo he had ever carried. The freighter, now just a burning skeleton in the distance, reminded him that mercy and courage often came at great risk. Yet he couldn't ignore her, couldn't abandon her as others had. In her fragile hands, he saw hope, not just for her survival, but for something greater. Somewhere far above, beyond the planet and the asteroid belts, a distant fleet of mercenaries searched for what they had lost. But for now, Elias and Lyra had time to rest, to recover, and to prepare for the journey ahead. Elias leaned back in his seat, his hand brushing against Lyra's small, glowing fingers. He didn't know what lay ahead, what dangers or wonders awaited, but he knew this. He had found something extraordinary, something that could change everything. And he would protect her no matter the cost. The stars stretched endlessly before them, vast and untouchable. But in the quiet of the spaceship, amidst the hum of the engines and the soft glow of Lyra's skin, Elias felt a strange warmth. Perhaps, in the emptiness of space, two very different beings could find connection, understanding, and even hope. And somewhere deep in the void, the universe seemed to take notice. The stars stretched endlessly outside the ship's viewports, distant points of light in the black emptiness of space. Elias adjusted the controls, scanning for any sign of pursuit. The freighter fleet was gone from the sensors, but he knew that the slavers wouldn't give up easily. They had a target, and now he and Lyra were that target. Lyra sat on a small cushion, her legs curled beneath her, staring at the glowing panels in front of her. The soft hum of the ship's engine filled the cabin, a constant reminder that they were moving through the void, yet she seemed restless. Her glowing veins pulsed faintly, reflecting the soft light, as if she was alive in ways Elias could not fully understand. He watched her closely, trying to gauge her moods, her intentions, her thoughts. "Lyra," he said gently, kneeling in front of her. "I need to know, can you understand me? She tilted her head slightly, her huge black eyes fixed on him. A soft hum came from her, musical and melodic, as if she was answering in her own language. Elias smiled faintly, realizing that she could communicate, just not in ways he had ever learned. He extended his hand slowly. After a long moment, she reached out, touching his fingers with the tip of her hand. A faint glow ran from her skin into his own, a warm sensation that made him shiver. Elias felt a strange connection, an unspoken understanding forming between them. He had never been close to anyone, human or otherwise, but now he was learning that trust could grow slowly, carefully, even in the emptiness of space. They traveled in silence for hours, the tension in the cabin growing as the emptiness pressed against them. Elias focused on navigation, weaving the ship through asteroid clusters to avoid detection. Lyra sat quietly, sometimes reaching out to touch panels, her glowing fingers brushing the controls. At first, he was startled. The ship responded almost immediately. Lights flickered, energy redirected, shields adjusted automatically. "Are you helping me?" he asked, astonished. Lyra hummed softly again, a sound that seemed to confirm it. Elias realized that she was not just fragile. She had powers, abilities beyond anything humans could understand. She could manipulate energy, influence machinery, perhaps even control more than he realized. His mind raced. If the slavers caught them, her abilities could be the difference between life and death. But he also knew that they couldn't stay hidden forever. They needed a plan, a safe place to recover, and perhaps allies who would understand the danger and the potential she represented. After several hours, Elias set a course for a neutral space station on the edge of the sector. It was a small, forgotten hub, known more for repairs and trade than law enforcement. It was the kind of place where a human and an alien could disappear if they moved carefully. As they approached, the alien girl leaned closer to the controls. Elias noticed her eyes glowing faintly as she touched the panels. A wave of energy pulsed through the ship, and the sensors displayed information he hadn't seen before. Hidden routes, sensor blind spots, small openings in the asteroid belts that could provide cover. Elias realized that she was not just powerful, she was intelligent and perceptive, capable of processing and understanding complex systems instinctively. "Okay, Lyra," he said, smiling faintly. "I think I understand you better now. You're amazing." She tilted her head, her glow pulsing rhythmically. Elias laughed softly. It was strange, this mixture of fear and hope he felt, this bond forming in the middle of endless darkness. The space station loomed ahead, a cylindrical structure with docking arms jutting out like skeletal fingers. Elias maneuvered the ship carefully, watching for any signs of the slavers. Everything seemed quiet, but he knew better than to trust appearances. They docked without incident, and the station's automated systems welcomed them with a soft hum. Inside, the corridors were dimly lit, narrow and metallic, with a faint smell of machine oil and recycled air. Elias led Lyra through the winding passageways, keeping her close, careful to shield her from any curious eyes. A few humans passed them, exchanging nods and murmured greetings. Elias could feel the tension in their eyes, a quiet wariness. Lyra, for her part, seemed fascinated by everything. Her glowing veins pulsed faster as she observed the humans, their clothes, their gestures. She reached out to touch a small panel, and Elias had to hold her hand to prevent her from activating the station's systems. They found a small room in the far end of the station, one that had been empty for some time. It smelled faintly of dust and old machinery, but it was private. Elias helped Lyra onto a cot, giving her food and water. She ate carefully, savoring each bite, her glowing skin softening as she regained strength. "Rest," he said. "We need to be ready for anything." Hours passed. The station was quiet, but Elias knew that it was only a matter of time before someone recognized them or reported their presence. He needed more information. He needed to understand what she could do, how powerful she was, and how they could protect her from those who hunted her. Lyra sat on the cot, her legs crossed, staring at him with those enormous black eyes. She seemed to sense his thoughts, responding with soft hums that resonated through the room. Elias watched her, fascinated. He had never seen a being like her, and he realized that he was not just protecting her body. He was learning to understand her mind, her essence. Over the next few days, Elias began to experiment carefully. He let her touch the ship's systems. watching as she manipulated energy fields, redirected power flows, and interfaced with machinery in ways he could barely comprehend. She was learning fast, adapting, and showing signs of intelligence that surpassed many humans he had known. "Lyra," he said one evening, "do you remember your family?" She paused, her glow dimming slightly. Elias realized that he had touched a sensitive topic. She hummed softly, and then, as if responding to her own memory, she projected a faint holographic image into the room. It was small, flickering, but clear enough to show beings like her, with the same glowing skin, moving through a world filled with strange structures and light. She reached out and Elias could see the longing in her eyes, the memory of something precious lost. Elias felt a pang of sorrow. He had rescued her, yes, but he could not bring back what had been taken. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We'll find a way," he whispered. "I promise you, no one will hurt you again." Her eyes locked onto his, glowing softly, and Elias felt a bond form that went beyond words. Trust had been built slowly, carefully, but now it was strong. But the quiet of the station was deceptive. Sensors outside the station began to pick up movement. Fast, deliberate, hostile. Elias frowned. The slavers had traced their path, or worse, someone had reported their presence. He moved quickly, checking the station's surveillance systems, and confirmed his fears. A small fleet of ships, sleek and armed, was heading their way. Elias turned to Lyra. "We have to move, now." She looked at him, understanding the urgency, and without hesitation, followed him. Elias guided her through the corridors, using hidden passages he had memorized over years of scavenging. They reached his ship just as the slavers' ships appeared on the station's sensors. The alien girl stepped onto the ship's floor, her glow pulsing brighter than ever. Elias noticed a strange intensity in her eyes, as if she could sense the danger and was preparing herself. He had seen glimpses of her abilities before, but now he realized that they might be their only chance to escape. The slavers arrived seconds later, docking on the outer port. Elias powered up the engines, preparing for immediate departure. The ship shuddered as it lifted from the station, moving through narrow docking channels. The alien girl's hands hovered over the controls, her glow brightening, and Elias realized she was helping, instinctively guiding the ship through the tight escape path. Energy pulsed from her fingers, interacting with the ship's systems. Shields strengthened, engines responded faster, and navigation adjusted automatically. Elias couldn't believe it. She was controlling the ship, enhancing its capabilities in ways he had never imagined. They emerged from the station's docking bay and accelerated into the asteroid fields, weaving between massive rocks and debris. The pursuing ships fired, energy blasts streaking through the void. Lyra's presence seemed to influence the ship's shields, deflecting the attacks with precision that bordered on instinctual genius. Elias realized that they were not just fleeing, they were surviving because of her. The bond between them had become more than trust. It was synergy, a partnership that combined human ingenuity and alien ability. Hours passed as they navigated through the treacherous fields. The slavers were relentless, but the combination of Elias' experience and Lyra's powers kept them one step ahead. They finally emerged on the far side of the asteroid belt, shaking off their pursuers. Elias allowed himself a breath, though his heart still raced. Lyra sank to the floor, exhausted but alive. Elias knelt beside her, offering water. She took it, her glowing veins pulsing softly, and looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and relief. He smiled. "You're incredible," he said. "I don't know what I'd do without you." She hummed, a sound like a soft song, and for a moment the vast emptiness of space seemed less lonely. Together they had survived, and together they would face whatever came next. Elias set the ship on a course toward a distant system rumored to have neutral colonies, places where they could hide and plan. But he knew their journey was far from over. The slavers would not give up, and now that they had seen her abilities, they would be even more determined. Yet, for the first time, Elias felt hope. Lyra was alive, she was powerful. And he had someone to protect and to learn from, someone who had changed his understanding of life, trust, and the universe itself. The stars stretched endlessly before them, but Elias no longer felt the same emptiness he had before. He had found something extraordinary, a companion, a friend, and perhaps a new purpose. And as the ship glided silently through the void, he knew that together they could survive anything. The neutral space station hovered quietly in the orbit of a barren, rocky planet. Its metal hull gleamed faintly under the light of a distant star, worn from years of traffic, repairs, and neglect. Elias guided the ship through the docking bay with steady hands, his mind racing with plans and precautions. Lyra sat beside him, her glowing veins pulsing softly, eyes wide and alert. She seemed to sense the tension, her body tensed as they approached the station. As they landed, automated docking clamps secured the ship with a hiss. Elias exhaled and looked at Lyra. "We're safe for now," he said, though he knew it was only temporary. The station was neutral, yes, but neutral often meant curious eyes, and curious eyes could become dangerous if they discovered her. Inside the station, the corridors were dim, illuminated by strips of pale light along the walls. The air smelled faintly of oil and recycled oxygen. Elias led Lyra through the winding hallways, careful to avoid the main traffic areas. He needed a place where she could rest, recover, and, most importantly, be hidden from anyone who might recognize her or report them. They found a small, unused quarters unit near the station's maintenance sector. The room was empty, quiet, and private, though it smelled of dust and machinery. Elias helped Lyra onto the cot, offering her food and water. She ate cautiously at first, but soon she began to eat more freely, her glowing veins dimming slightly as she relaxed. Elias sat beside her, watching her closely. "We need to figure out what comes next," he said. "The slavers will not stop, and now your abilities, they make you a target. We need allies, people who will understand you, protect you, not use you." Lyra tilted her head, listening. She hummed softly, a melodic tone that seemed thoughtful. Elias realized that communication with her would take time, patience, and care. But he could see the intelligence in her eyes, the way she observed, learned, and responded. She was learning not just from him, but from the environment, from the humans around her. Over the next few days, Elias let her explore the room carefully, teaching her basic gestures and simple words. She responded quickly, mimicking his movements and sounds, her curiosity growing. He noticed that she was drawn to technology. Panels, consoles, and small machines fascinated her. When she touched them, faint pulses of energy ran through her hands, and the devices seemed to respond to her. One evening, Elias asked carefully, "Lyra, do you remember your people?" Her glow dimmed, and she made a soft, almost sorrowful hum. Then slowly she projected a small holographic image into the room. It flickered faintly, showing figures like her, moving among structures filled with light and flowing energy. Elias watched in awe. She reached out to the hologram, her eyes wide and full of longing. He understood then that she was not only intelligent but deeply connected to her culture and her lost family. Elias placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "We'll find a way," he whispered. "I promise, Lyra, no one will hurt you again." She looked at him, her glow pulsing softly. The hum she made now seemed warmer, a sign of trust and hope. Elias smiled faintly. It was a fragile connection, but it was real. Their quiet was interrupted by a soft alarm. Sensors outside the station had detected movement, ships approaching at high speed. Elias froze, his heart racing. "Slavers," he muttered. "They found us." He moved quickly, checking the station's surveillance systems. A small fleet of sleek armed vessels was on a direct course toward the station. Elias realized they had been tracked from the asteroid field. Someone must have reported them, or the slavers had resources to follow them across vast distances. Lyra's glow intensified, her veins pulsing with energy. Elias watched in fascination as she hovered her hands over the controls of the small portable panel he had brought. A pulse of light ran from her fingers into the station systems, and the doors to the maintenance corridors began to lock automatically, sealing off sections from potential intruders. "She's protecting us," Elias whispered, awe in his voice. "She understands what's happening." The slavers' ships arrived moments later, docking forcefully on the outer ports. Automated doors opened, and armed figures began to move through the station. Elias took Lyra's hand, guiding her through hidden maintenance tunnels he had memorized over years of scavenging. They moved quickly, quietly, avoiding detection. As they navigated the tunnels, Lyra's powers became more apparent. She touched walls, conduits, and control panels, causing subtle shifts in energy fields that obscured their presence. Sensors blinked, security doors misaligned, and surveillance cameras malfunctioned just long enough to give them cover. Elias realized she was not just helping, they were working together, a team moving in perfect unison. They reached a small observation deck overlooking a docking bay filled with cargo ships. Elias took a deep breath, surveying the area. The slavers were organized, well-armed, and clearly expecting resistance, but he also saw an opportunity. If Lyra could manipulate energy fields, they could disable the fleet without direct confrontation. He whispered to her, "Lyra, can you do it?" She hummed, a soft note vibrating through the room. Her hands glowed brightly as she reached toward the docking bay, and Elias felt a surge of energy pass through the station. The lights flickered, machinery whirred, and several of the slaver ships powered down, their systems unresponsive. Energy arcs danced along the metal surfaces, harmless to humans but effective in disabling the enemy ships. Elias grinned. "You're incredible," he said. "We can get out of this." Lyra responded with a soft hum, her glow dimming as the immediate threat passed. But Elias knew it was only temporary. The slavers would not give up, they would adapt, and their pursuit would continue. They needed more than power and skill, they needed allies, strategy, and planning. Over the next few days, Elias contacted old acquaintances and neutral traders, careful to avoid detection. They needed resources, fuel, supplies, and information about the slavers' movements. Lyra stayed close, observing and learning, sometimes assisting by interfacing with terminal systems and uncovering hidden data. Elias began to realize that her abilities were not just extraordinary, they were unique. She could interact with technology in ways no human could, sensing systems, predicting responses, and even influencing energy fields directly. If used wisely, she could help liberate not just herself, but others who had been enslaved or trapped by powerful forces. One night, as they rested in the hidden quarters, Elias spoke quietly. "Lyra, one day we might be able to fight back, not just survive, but stop them. You could help save your people and maybe others too." She looked at him, her glow soft and steady. Her hum was thoughtful, as if she understood, as if she was already imagining possibilities he could barely grasp. Elias felt a surge of hope. For the first time, he imagined a future not just of survival, but of resistance, of freedom. Days passed, and they prepared their ship for departure once more. Lyra had recovered much of her strength, though she remained cautious and hesitant to fully trust anyone but Elias. Together, they gathered information, mapped escape routes, and studied the slavers' fleet patterns. Elias marveled at how quickly she adapted, how naturally she understood systems and strategy. When the day came to leave the station, Elias and Lyra moved with purpose. They navigated through hidden corridors, avoiding patrols, and reached the ship without incident. As they lifted off, Elias glanced at her. She was focused, calm, yet her glow betrayed anticipation and a quiet readiness for the challenges ahead. "Ready for the next step?" he asked. She hummed affirmatively, her fingers brushing his briefly. Elias felt a connection, stronger now than ever. Together, they were no longer just fugitive and rescued. They were partners, united by trust, necessity, and the possibility of something greater. They exited the station's orbit and entered a dense asteroid belt. Elias piloted through the rocky maze while Lyra touched the controls lightly, guiding and enhancing the ship's systems. Energy pulses from her hands stabilized the engines, improved navigation, and created a subtle shield that deflected minor debris impacts. Hours later, the asteroid belt gave way to open space. The stars stretched endlessly before them, but Elias knew the journey ahead would be filled with danger, challenges, and difficult choices. Yet he also knew that he had found someone extraordinary, a being whose courage, intelligence, and abilities could change the course of events. Lyra rested against a console, glowing faintly, her eyes scanning the stars. Elias studied her, realizing that their bond had grown beyond survival. She had taught him patience, empathy, and trust, and he had shown her that not all humans were predators or cruel. Together, they had survived pursuit, discovered new abilities, and forged a partnership that might one day tip the balance against the slavers. Elias smiled faintly. "We'll find a way to make things right," he whispered. "I promise you, Lyra. Your people, your family, they'll be safe, and maybe we'll even stop those who do harm." Lyra responded with a soft, musical hum. Her glowing veins pulsed steadily, almost like a heartbeat, reflecting a growing sense of hope and purpose. For the first time, the emptiness of space felt less lonely, filled with possibility, connection, and determination. They traveled onward, navigating uncharted sectors, preparing for the day when survival would no longer be enough. The day would come when they could fight back, protect those in need, and show that courage, empathy, and intelligence could triumph even in the harshest corners of the universe. Elias and Lyra, human and alien, fugitive and survivor, moved together into the void, ready to face the challenges that awaited them. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time, it was filled not only with danger but with hope, trust, and the quiet promise of freedom. The stars stretched endlessly before Elias and Lyra as their ship glided silently through the void. Every planet, asteroid, and fragment of debris held the potential for danger, but also for hope. Lyra had regained most of her strength, and her glow pulsed with a steady, confident rhythm. She had learned much about human systems, about trust, and about survival. Yet Elias knew their greatest challenge was still ahead. The slavers had tracked them relentlessly, and their fleet was waiting somewhere in the sector, ready to capture her and end their journey. Elias adjusted the controls, checking the sensors again. "We'll have to be smart about this," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We can't just run forever. We need a plan to end this once and for all." Lyra tilted her head, her black eyes reflecting the starlight. She reached out and touched a console, sending a pulse of energy through the ship. The systems flickered, and a holographic map appeared, showing nearby fleets, weak points in patrol routes, and gravitational anomalies. Elias realized she was guiding him, using her powers not just for defense but for strategy. "I think we can turn the tables," Elias said. "We can make them regret chasing us." Hours later, they arrived near an uncharted nebula, a swirling mass of gas, ice, and energy that distorted sensors and cloaked their presence. It was dangerous territory, but perfect for an ambush. Elias piloted carefully, weaving the ship through dense clouds of gas and ice. Lyra's hands hovered over the controls, glowing faintly, as she manipulated the ship's energy systems. Shields strengthened, engines responded faster, and navigation became instinctively precise. Elias had never felt anything like it. It was as if the ship itself was alive, reacting to her presence. As they moved deeper into the nebula, sensors detected the slavers' fleet approaching. Their ships were sleek and deadly, cutting through space with calculated precision. Elias felt a familiar surge of tension, but now he was prepared. He turned to Lyra. "It's time." She nodded slightly, her glow intensifying. Elias adjusted the course, guiding the ship toward the center of the nebula. They would use the swirling energy fields to mask their movements and create an advantage. Lyra's powers allowed them to manipulate energy patterns, redirect sensor signals, and even destabilize the slavers' ships from a distance. The first confrontation came suddenly. A slaver frigate emerged from the nebula, weapons primed. Elias veered sharply, dodging energy blasts, while Lyra extended her hands. A surge of energy pulsed from her fingertips, spreading across the nebula like ripples in water. The slaver ship systems faltered, weapons going offline, engines stuttering. Elias realized that she was controlling the battlefield itself, turning the environment into an extension of her power. "Keep going," he shouted. "We can make it." They moved deeper, drawing the slavers into a trap. Lyra's abilities grew stronger with each pulse of energy, shaping the nebula's fields to confuse sensors, deflect attacks, and protect their ship. Elias marveled at her skill, at the precision with which she manipulated systems far beyond human understanding. Several more slaver ships pursued them, but Elias and Lyra were relentless. Using the nebula's energy, they disabled engines, scrambled communications, and created temporary blind spots. Each pulse of energy from Lyra sent a clear message: they would not be captured. Finally, they reached the heart of the nebula, a massive energy vortex that pulsed with light and heat. Elias held the ship steady, feeling the strain of navigating such unpredictable forces. Lyra extended her hands fully, her glow bright enough to illuminate the cabin. Energy rippled outward, stabilizing the vortex while sending waves toward the slavers' ships. One by one, their engines faltered, weapons shorted, and systems went offline. The slavers were immobilized, trapped in the nebula, unable to pursue further. Elias exhaled deeply. "You did it," he said, awe in his voice. "You stopped them." Lyra looked at him, her glow softening. She hummed, a melodic tone that conveyed relief, exhaustion, and triumph. Elias realized that she was not just powerful, she was decisive, courageous, and compassionate. She had the ability to protect life, not destroy it indiscriminately. The nebula cleared, and the fleet of slavers drifted helplessly, their threat neutralized. Elias guided the ship out into open space, glancing at Lyra. "We're not just surviving anymore," he said. "We're free." Lyra stepped forward, her hands glowing faintly as she interfaced with a small communicator. Images appeared, holograms of her people, scattered, hidden, waiting for rescue. Elias watched as she sent signals, guiding them to safe locations, warning them of danger and offering hope. The small alien girl who had once been trapped in a cage was now a beacon of strength, intelligence, and leadership. "Your people," Elias said softly. "You're going to save them." Lyra's hum responded like an affirmation, warm and musical. She reached out and touched his arm briefly, a gesture of gratitude and trust. Elias smiled. He had found more than an ally. He had found a friend, a partner, and a new understanding of what courage meant. Days later, they traveled to a hidden cluster of planets where Lyra's species had survived in small enclaves. She guided Elias to the coordinates with precision, her abilities interfacing with the natural energy fields of the planets to locate safe passages and hidden refuges. Elias marveled at her knowledge, at the depth of understanding she possessed about her own people and the universe around them. As they landed on one of the small, lush planets, Elias helped Lyra onto solid ground. The air was rich with oxygen and unfamiliar fragrances. Trees with translucent leaves glowed faintly in the light of a nearby sun. Lyra's eyes widened in recognition. She stepped forward, her glow brightening as she scanned the area. Figures emerged from the forests, cautious at first, but quickly recognizing her. She called to them, her voice a melodic hum that carried across the trees. The figures responded, approaching cautiously, then rushing forward in relief and joy as they realized she was safe. Elias watched, a lump forming in his throat as families reunited, embracing her, sharing their own glowing energy with her in recognition. Lyra turned back to him, her glow pulsing gently, eyes reflecting gratitude and hope. Elias knew that this was what he had been fighting for, not just survival, but connection, compassion, and the possibility of a better future. Over the next few weeks, Elias and Lyra helped the survivors rebuild. Lyra's abilities allowed them to restore damaged systems, purify water, and create safe habitats. Elias used his human knowledge to organize resources, teach survival skills, and help fortify the settlements against future threats. Together, they combined human ingenuity and alien power, showing that cooperation could create something stronger than fear or oppression. One evening, as the twin suns of the planet set in the sky, Elias and Lyra stood on a cliff overlooking the settlements. Children played nearby, laughter echoing through the air. Adults worked together, building homes, creating gardens, and sharing knowledge. The air was alive with hope, a stark contrast to the emptiness and fear they had faced in the stars. Lyra turned to Elias, her glow soft and warm. She reached out and touched his hand. Elias felt a surge of emotion, pride, relief, and wonder at how far they had come. "Thank you," she hummed. "No," Elias said, smiling. "Thank you, Lyra. You taught me what courage and hope really mean." They watched the suns dip below the horizon, the sky painted in shades of red and gold. Elias knew their journey was far from over. The universe was vast, and danger could appear again. But for now, they had found safety, purpose, and a connection that transcended species. Lyra's people gathered around, curious about the human who had saved her. Some were cautious, others amazed, but all could see the bond that had formed between them. Elias realized that this moment was a small step in something much larger, a future where humans and other species could coexist, protect one another, and learn from each other. That night, as the stars blinked overhead, Elias and Lyra sat together under the alien sky. She hummed softly, a song of memory and hope, and Elias listened. In her melody, he could feel the past, the pain, and the promise of what was to come. They had survived, they had fought back, and they had changed the fate of her people. The universe was still vast and dangerous, but Elias knew this: courage, empathy, and trust were stronger than fear. Lyra's survival had proven it. Humanity had the capacity to protect, to nurture, and to rise above cruelty. And in the glow of her light, he felt the true meaning of partnership, hope, and heroism. The twin suns finally set, leaving the sky deep and dark, speckled with distant stars. Elias placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder, and she leaned into him, their bond stronger than ever. In that quiet, precious moment, they understood that survival was only the beginning. Together, they could shape the future, fight for what was right, and inspire hope in a universe that so often seemed empty and cruel. And somewhere beyond the stars, across countless worlds and untold distances, the universe itself seemed to take notice. A human and an alien together, proving that empathy, courage, and unity could light even the darkest corners of space. For the first time in her life, Lyra was truly free. And for the first time, Elias understood that humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons or technology, but in the capacity to care, to trust, and to fight for what was right. The journey had ended, but the story of hope, survival, and unity had only just begun.